If you have ever wanted to know how to craft your message, your story, or an offer in a way that gets people to jump at the chance to work with you, then this episode is for you. I'm interviewing the co-host of the Copywriters Club podcast, Rob Marsh. He is really a fountain of knowledge when it comes to copywriting, persuasion, all of those good things. We start today by talking about the real fundamental principles of good copywriting. We then talk about 3 huge mistakes that Rob sees people making all the time. You might not know that you're making them. You might be making them right now, and it really will save you a lot of time and money if you can root out those mistakes and solve them. Then we talk about the ethics of copywriting, how you should think about your morals in alignment with what is manipulation, what is persuasion, all of those good things. And then we are going to talk about the most surprising marketing situation in Rob's career, and I track in a story or two of my own as well. Enjoy today's episode. You are going to love this. See you soon. Rob, thank you so much for being on the show today. I'm very excited for this conversation. Copy and persuasion and all of these things. I love it. I love the psychology behind it. I'm really excited to have this conversation. I know our listeners and viewers are going to get tons of value from it as well. In case anyone listening has never heard of copy or direct response copywriting, just first of all, tell us, what does that mean?
Yeah, so copy is or are the words that you use to communicate with your customers in business. So literally it is the text on your website, in your brochure, anything that's written down. But it actually goes a little bit beyond that too, because it includes things like sales scripts. If you have a sales team that's doing sales, you want to script that out, and you'll often write it in a way that elicits a response of some kind, or gets people to take action or helps them solve a problem. Right, all of that is copy. So if you just think of copy as the words that you're using in your business, you probably can't go too far wrong.
Okay, cool. And we're going to go, for those of you who are like more expert in this, we're going to go geeky, do not worry, but I'm going to start high level. So give us a couple of the fundamentals of good copywriting.
Yeah, so there are a lot of formulas out there. So if you were searching online for information about copywriting, you'll find a bunch of formulas, but they all pretty much do the same thing. Good copy, number one, it catches your attention and it holds it. So what you did with the introduction before we started talking here is you created some curiosity, right? Like you're using copy to catch somebody's attention, and then hopefully we're able to create some content here that's actually going to hold that attention. But so it does that first. Second, it starts to persuade your customer. You're showing that you know them, the problems that they have, the world that they live in, the situation that they are, the pains that they feel. And then it also starts to talk about your solution and how you're going to solve that. Then, it will overcome objections, because, anytime that, you're offering somebody a solution, especially if you're, in a sales environment, and everything is sales. So, almost every environment is a sales environment, but you need to overcome your client's objections. Will it work for me? Or I've tried something similar before and it didn't work, or it costs too much money. How will I afford it? Like these are the kinds of things that we often need to address with copy. Next, it reduces the risk. So, anytime that we're asking people to, buy from us, there's a risk here. I'm about to give you money. Are you actually going to deliver the thing that you said? And so it includes things like guarantees, to reduce the risk. There are other ways to reduce the risk too, with special offers, that kind of thing. And then finally, it asks for some kind of an action. Usually in a sales environment or, with a website, we're talking about buying something. We want somebody to buy something, but sometimes it's, downloading a lead magnet or a free sample of something, or asking for a demo, or a sales call, those kinds of things. So it's asking for some kind of action that you want your customer to take.
Love that. Love that. One of the most common objections I hear when, if I talk about copywriting, or if I talk about persuasion, you might even be way ahead of me here. Do you hear people say like, oh, like there's like a moral element to this? I don't want to, is it sleazy? Is it right to persuade people? How do you think about morals, the moral landscape when it comes to copywriting?
This is a really good question, because when we're talking about persuasion, it's a really fine line to manipulation, right? In fact, a lot of the things that we do as copywriters and as marketers, in order to persuade customers to do things, are the same things that con men do to take advantage of people. So I think number one, to make sure that your marketing is not manipulative and is not taking advantage is your intent. If you are selling something that doesn't actually deliver the promise that you're making, then you're a con man. That is not, that's not okay, right? So, and I would discourage anybody from doing anything like that. So your intent, are you trying to help? Does the thing actually work? But I would also say that, if you have a solution for somebody, so let's say that I have a broken arm and you have a product, maybe it's a cast or some kind of a plaster or something that will fix, maybe it's a remedy of some kind, and you have that and it will fix my broken arm. You have a moral obligation to offer that to me so that I can fix my problem. That's a terrible example, but if I have, say, let's say that I don't get along with my teenage kids, and you're a counselor, and you've got a program that can help me fix that relationship and make this relationship awesome. They're gonna have a better life because this relationship's gonna be better. You have a moral obligation to sell me that solution so that I can solve this problem that I have. And so I do think that we do need to be careful. We do need to make sure that we're not manipulating people into things that they don't need. We're not asking people to buy things that don't work. We're not making promises that aren't true. But if you've got a solution that solves a problem for somebody, we really do have an obligation to help them solve their problems so that they can live better lives.
Mm. When people know about the fundamental principles of copywriting, um, once they've seen that, is it a bit like breaking the fourth wall? Does it still work once your listener knows what you're doing?
It does. Yeah, it does. I mean, I've been writing copy for 25 years, and I still will read sales pages or see a message, video message or whatever, and think, oh, I've got to get this thing. Like I can literally go point by point and see what somebody's doing in the copy. Oh, I can see that they're building credibility here, and I can see that they're overcoming an objection. And yet, if it's done well, I still want the product at the end of the page. And so, and again, that's usually tied to the fact that it's going to give me some kind of a fix for a problem or a gain that I'd like to see in my life. And if that becomes clear, then it will work on a copywriter, it'll work on marketing, or a marketing person. Yeah, it works on all of us. In fact, it's funny that people will always say, advertising doesn't work on me, but, ask them about what brands they use and they'll name their favorite brands. How did you find out about those brands? Like advertising works, marketing works. And again, that goes back to, what you were asking about, manipulation and like, because it works, we have this obligation to make sure that we're doing it for good, right? We're helping people really solve real problems or help them realize gains in their life that they wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah. I can't remember the study, and I don't remember the book I read it in, so it's not particularly a helpful reference. But I know that there was a study about how much advertising influences us. And the funny thing is, those who think that they are affected the least are the category that are affected the most.
That's
So
exactly right.
those who actually understand, yeah, I am influenced, they're the ones, less influenced.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I mean, something unique too has happened over the last 2 or 3 decades. As more and more people go to school and to college, more and more people, this is maybe a little bit more true in America than it is elsewhere in the world because of the way that our education system works. But more people have had business classes and marketing classes. And so, as we see what is going on around us, sometimes we recognize those things and say, oh yeah, I can see, that McDonald's has put this thing on the screen and I'm reacting to it. It's making me hungry, or the colors that they've used, or the words that they've used, or they're getting me to want this thing that they have. As we recognize that stuff, it still works on us. But you might look at it and go, oh, I see what they're doing. I'm still hungry at the end of the commercial.
Yeah.
I still want the fries, right? Or
Yeah.
a sip of Coke or whatever the thing is.
Yeah, a little bit like Subway sandwich pumping out that smell that just like immediately makes
Exactly.
you want to, yeah.
Exactly.
Um, okay, and does it change by country? The principles that work, is it different in different cultures?
So there definitely are cultural differences that you need to be aware of. And I mean, there's so many cultures, we can't really define what those are. But when it comes right down to it, human behavior is the same pretty much worldwide. We're all motivated by the same kinds of needs. We have similar pains, we have similar problems, right? We want to be happy. We want to take care of our families. We need to feed ourselves. So for the most part, psychology, behavioral economics, these things that, kind of all talk about the way that we behave and go after things that we need or solve our problems are true across the world. And that's, that's why you find advertising across the world.
Mm. What are the most common mistakes? We talked in the introduction about your podcast and about your programs, and so you've had tons of clients who you've taught, and you've probably seen the most common mistakes, the most common things that are working. What are the big no-nos in copywriting?
Yeah, a couple of don'ts. Let me give you three don'ts. So, number one, assuming that you actually know who your customer is. And this is true of especially of a lot of small business people, because we go into business because we've had a problem and we figured out how to solve it, and so we're like, hey, I can sell this problem to other people who have a similar problem, right? But the very fact that a business owner has taken the action to actually solve a problem changes the perspective, and suddenly you start talking about the problem in different ways. We have the cursive knowledge, so things that your customer who hasn't actually experienced the solution yet does not know. They may not understand the same things about the problem or the solution. That the awareness levels are all different, and so never assume that you actually know the customer, even though you may think that you're one of them. And can I just throw out a reference that may be helpful to your customers? If you're thinking, okay, how can I really get to know my customer and find the messages that are going to resonate with them? There's a book called Finding the Right Message by Jennifer Hayvice. That's phenomenal. It's a very short read. It's like 120 pages or so. I think you can get it on Kindle for a few dollars, a couple of pounds. But it really walks through how do you get into the mind of the person that you're talking to, so that you can capture those messages, the things that they're thinking, and then reflect that back in your copy as you're talking to your customer. So that's number one. Don't assume that you know your customer. Number two, don't exaggerate. And this is going to go back to what we're talking about, around manipulation or whatever. But when you exaggerate what your product does, or you exaggerate, the testimonials or the claims that you're making, it starts to raise objections in your customer's mind. They start thinking, well, that can't be true. It doesn't feel right, or it doesn't feel true. So only say things that are true, that you can back up, that you can prove. And then kind of a bonus, maybe third don't, because all of us, or most of us, learn how to write in school. We all think that we can write our own copy. And the reality is that sometimes when you're starting out, you don't have money to hire somebody else to help you with that. And so you'll do it, you kind of figure it out on your own. But, there's so much advantage in finding a copywriter who has really studied the principles of persuasion. They know human psychology. They know what works when it comes to headlines or calls to actions. They know how to overcome the objections. They know how to write a guarantee. It's so much better when you have the budget and the time's right to hire a copywriter to work with. And again, don't go cheap on that, because if you're not paying very much, they probably don't know very much, right? But you also don't need to spend millions of dollars on a copywriter. There are lots of good copywriters out there that can help you. So don't try to go it on your own if you don't absolutely have to.
Right. Yeah. And a good middle ground that I found. How we do it in our team is we have internal copywriters, and then we invest in coaches who are maybe 3 levels above. So we're not paying these people full time, because that would be crazy money, but they really coach our copywriters, and then you're basically getting the knowledge of a senior person and the execution of a more junior person.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to do it. We call that copy chiefing.
Okay.
And there are definitely copywriters out there that do that. You could hire a say junior to medium level copywriter, and then hire a copy coach for $1,000 more. They'll look at the copy that they've written, make some suggestions. That's a great way to get some additional value out of your copy team.
Yeah. A couple more things I want to pick up on from these 3 tips. Thank you for those. For anyone listening or watching who's never heard that phrase cursive of knowledge before, can you outline a bit more what that means?
Yeah, so when we know things, it changes the way that we talk about things. So, one example that I've heard is, a particular, let's say there's music. So, if I say ba da bop 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 ba da bop 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 ba da bop 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 ba da bop 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 bop, I just kind of did this weird thing with a song, right? I know what song that is in my head, and to me, it feels like you as a listener should know what that song is too. But do you
Not a
know what
clue.
that song would be?
Not a clue.
Yeah, not a clue. And maybe there's a listener out here who's thinking, oh yeah, that's the happy birthday song that everybody sings, right? Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you. So I know that, and when I say something like that, I can assume that you might know it. So maybe a better example is what we're talking about here. I can say a lot of things about copywriting. I could go really into depth about things like scarcity or urgency or reciprocation, which are all principles that we use in copy. And just saying those words make an assumption that you and your audience are going to understand exactly what they are. You might, but there's also a really good chance that if you haven't read, the book by Robert Cialdini called Influence, or heard other people talking about, how do you build reciprocation into, your relationship with your customers, that you'd be like, wait a second, what is that? How is it done? And so you make a lot of assumptions about what your customers would know. It's a really bad thing to do when we're trying to sell people on things, because it just causes confusion. So yeah, that's something we have to be really careful about when we're writing copy.
Yeah, I love that. I also read that the most successful politicians speak at like a third grade level.
Yeah, true. And the best copy is at a fifth grade level or below. Like, if you're trying to use really big words or trying to be fancy, so that's a general rule, right? It's not always true, although you're never going to go wrong by dumbing down the copy. Dumbing down is the wrong word because it's not really being dumb. It's talking at a level that's easily communicated and easily understood. And so even, PhDs, they like to read copy at a fifth grade level or below. And yeah, you're right. Politicians do the same thing. The best politicians do the same thing. The
Mm,
politicians that don't end up getting elected tend to speak over their audiences.
yeah, and if anyone has read the book *Sapiens* or the other books by the same author, *21 Lessons for the 21st Century*, *Homo Deus*, it's essentially history and science repackaged in something that regular people enjoy. When I
Exactly.
say regular people, I of course mean not historians or scientists.
Yeah,
Um,
you're talking about people
that's
like
all it
me,
is.
so
And
so that I
me,
can.
and
Yeah,
me.
exactly.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So let's go into some of those. You actually talked on, you briefly touched on some principles there: reciprocity, urgency, scarcity. Let's start with reciprocity because that's an interesting one. What does that mean?
So reciprocity is a principle based on doing something for somebody who's done a favor for you. There are a lot of really good examples. I mentioned the book Influence by Robert Cialdini. He talks about in this book, and it was written in the 80s. So, back in the 1970s, early 80s, the Hare Krishnas used to go into the airports and they would give people flowers. They'd walk up and they'd give you a flower. And then as you were taking the flower, this gift from them, they would ask for a donation. And the principle says that, because somebody just gave me something, that you'll give me something back. And so, somebody just handed you a flower. You didn't even really want the flower. You're about to board an airplane, right? So it's not exactly a useful thing, but you might give them, a few cents, a couple of dollars, just, out of your pocket because, okay, they just did that favor. We do this in marketing quite a bit. Anytime that you give something to a client, sometimes we think we're creating an obligation for reciprocity when we're not really, because, for instance, a lot of us will have lead magnets on our websites to attract an email. When we do that, we think, well, we just gave them a lead magnet, and so now they're going to buy my product. That's reciprocity. Well, actually, the reciprocity is they gave you the email, and you were obligated to give them something of value for that email, right? It's over at that point. But as human beings, we do favors for people who do favors for us. And we see that in the book you just referenced, *Sapiens*. It's this: how do we help each other out? How do we build societies where we're collectively working together? And reciprocation is one of those things that we do as humans that have helped our society grow bigger. So it is a principle that we can use when we're trying to influence people. It's actually one of the more difficult ones to do because in commercial relationships we don't feel the same obligation that we might in a personal relationship. But the principle is basically, you're at the bar, you're at the pub with a friend, they buy you a beer. What are you going to do when the next round comes around? You're going to buy them a beer right back, right? That's the principle of reciprocation.
Love it.
Yeah.
And urgency and scarcity. I think two quick questions on that. One is, of course, what does it mean? Maybe some people don't know. And then the follow up is, how do you create urgency and or scarcity in an environment where there isn't a limited number of seats, there isn't a deadline when something closes. It's something that's always available, and it's available to an unlimited number of people.
Yeah. So first, what is urgency or scarcity? So urgency is, that feeling, the need to act fast because time is running out. Scarcity is the need to act fast because a quantity is running out, right? So if there are only 3 bananas left at the store and you need bananas, you're gonna grab them before somebody else can, right? Urgency. The plane's about to leave. You have to board by 5 o'clock. If you don't get on by 5 o'clock, like that's an urgent situation. So when it comes to products that don't have, a time element or a quantity element, honestly, I would say don't try to create urgency or scarcity around them because that's manipulation. If it's not real, you shouldn't be doing it. Having said that, if for instance you were selling some kind of a program or a product and it, might be discontinued at some point in the future, or you're running a test and you know that the offer is going to change, you could say something like, we're running this as a test. It could change in a couple of weeks. It may stay the same, but it could change. And so, if what we're offering to you right now matters, if you want it, get it now. You could also talk about, really go deep on how it's going to solve a pain. So when people feel a pain or they have a problem that they're feeling today, even though the product may be available, 6 months, you could talk about how it's going to solve your problem now. It's going to solve your problem today. So, there's that element to it as well. But I would lean as far away from creating fake urgency and fake scarcity as you possibly can.
Yeah, agree. Uh, Another principle I love, I just love it both as a reader of copy or a listener, and also when I'm creating something, is curiosity.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
what role does that play?
So when it comes to catching attention, it's everything, right? Headlines need to be open. Sometimes we call them blind, and that means that it's not giving away the thing that you're talking about, right? So I don't have a whole bunch of examples pulled up on ahead of me, but some really famous headlines, include ones like, they laughed when I sat down at the piano, but when I began to play. So that's the headline. We've gotten the introduction to a story here. Something like, why were they laughing? What happened when he began to play? Right. We've created this open loop, and we naturally want to find out what is how does this end? Right. So that's one example. Another old headline that's quite famous and made millions of dollars for a copywriter named Joe Carbo is just simply the lazy man's way to riches. Well, that opens up a bunch of questions. Like, wait a second, lazy people, like, we don't usually think of them as being rich. So there's a little bit of a conundrum here. And a lot of us are thinking, well, if I'm working so hard and I'm not rich, and this lazy guy is getting rich, like, what should I know about this thing, right? So it's created some curiosity there. It's opened a question that we want to find out. So curiosity is an amazingly powerful tool for getting people interested. It does create a little bit of a problem for marketers, and that is you have to hold the interest. You have to pay that off in some way. And so, if you build up, a ton of curiosity, you've got to have some kind of a payoff and a reward for the person who goes deeper and reads the copy that you've written.
I don't know if you have any examples offhand because it's a bit tricky, but I quite often see people who they've created a headline or something that they think is creating curiosity, but it's actually killed it. Do you see that, and do you have any sort of examples of that?
Yeah, so that actually is when I mentioned the blind headline. If you give away too much in your headline, so that it's like, oh, I kind of figured it out. So it's almost like movie trailers today. You get 3 minutes of the very best parts, and they give away the whole plot, and you're just like, well, I guess I can see the whole thing, but I mostly just saw what happened. So you definitely need to make sure that you leave a question open. So I don't have an example in front of me of somebody who's giving away too much. But oftentimes, if you were talking about, say, you've got a formula for something, and you say, here's the formula for fixing this problem, maybe you have done a little too much. So,
Yeah.
I'd have to give a little bit more thought to come up with some really good examples, but you're exactly right. You need to leave the questions open. You need to give them a reason to keep reading.
Yeah, yeah. I actually saw one the other day for a guy who was helping people to grow a fitness business, and he said how I use 30-day challenges to grow my fitness business. And of course, there's a bit of curiosity, like, okay,
Sure.
how is he using 30-day challenges? But essentially, as a reader, I've seen people do 30-day challenges. I sort of feel like I know, how that works. Even if I don't, that's what I feel, and so I don't click that ad. But maybe if he would have said, how I've grown my fitness business to, X milestone, and no, I didn't use Facebook ads or webinars or, five other things that I would be thinking of. Like,
Yep.
wow, how on earth did he do it?
That's exactly right. You can give away too much, or what's really happening, in the example that you just shared, is that you're using something that's already familiar to our audiences. So if you're saying the same thing that people have heard over and over and over, that's not curiosity inducing. That's boredom inducing. And like, this is a really big challenge for a lot of marketers, a lot of copywriters, because we've been marketing really intensely for more than a century. Like, if it can be said, it has been said. And so finding new ideas, finding new ways to get people interested in things that we're doing, talking about things that have become boring in new ways to make them exciting is hard. It really is hard. And again, that goes back to why hiring a copywriter is often a really good idea, because they may be able to pull some ideas out of the things that we are so familiar with in our businesses and help us make it a little bit more curiosity inducing. It feels a little bit new, makes me want to think, I've got to learn more about this.
Yeah. Our clients have that exact problem. So our community of passion fighters are experts, coaches, teachers. They're using the Passion platform to launch their own app and to teach their skills and to productize their skills, stop trading time for money and start trading product for money. And a lot of them are yoga teachers, fitness instructors, photographers, art
Mhm.
teachers, music teachers, dance teachers, whatever language. Um, and a lot of them say, Dan, like, how do I create something like completely unique out of this? I'm really a Pilates teacher, like the 5,000 other people who are doing the same thing. um and that is hard. You're absolutely right. One approach that I personally like, and I've seen work as well, is what is sort of the example I just gave, where it's like, well, why don't you just throw stones at like three or four things that you don't think is the right way to solve that problem that a lot of people do, so one of our clients is a golf instructor, and what he's teaching itself, a number of people teach, but he also specifically teaches, don't go to the driving range all the time, and it's not about how many balls you hit, like, and those two things are like, in the golf world, as I understand, are like very much like commonly understood truths. You have to hit a lot of balls, you have to go to the driving range nonstop, and that's how you improve consistency. So just by throwing stones at something that is like conventional wisdom, he creates curiosity for his solution, even if the solution itself, there's other people talking about that. Would you agree with that? And is there any other way of doing it?
Yeah, I 100% agree with it. So, invalidating other solutions is something that we do a lot in sales pages. And there's good reasons to do that. So, let's say that I need to lose some weight this year. I've tried to lose weight in the past. Maybe I've tried diet pills, or I've tried some kind of a meal plan or whatever, and they haven't worked. When this new solution comes along that I find, if they're not saying, hey, you tried diet pills, or you tried this weight loss plan, you tried this meal plan or whatever, and it didn't work, and give me some reason to understand why it didn't work, because those solutions weren't based on, say, my metabolic rate, or maybe there's something there. And then you introduce that other solution that definitely helps make your solution stand out. Even better if you're using what we call a unique mechanism, and that is the thing about your product that is different from all other products. Usually it would have some kind of a unique name. It's going to stand out. And so, one of the best examples of a unique mechanism that I can think of, I don't know if they have this in the UK and in Europe, but in America, there's an exercise program called P90X.
Yep.
If you've heard of that, P90X is weight loss, or sorry, lifting weights and cardio. That's all it is. It's like every other exercise program ever invented. There's not a lot else you can do besides weight and cardio. But what they did is they talked about why it worked, because in shifting from one activity to the next day after day after day, you created this thing called muscle confusion. Well, what's muscle confusion? They talk about it as it's this thing where your muscles don't get used to the exercise that you're doing. And so because you're, moving them in different ways from day to day to day, it actually has a bigger impact. I don't know if that's true or not. It probably is. But the fact that they call it muscle confusion sets P90X apart from everything else that's out there. And they've since evolved that unique mechanism. There's something else that they're talking about now, but apply that to your business. The Pilates instructor, or somebody who's teaching something to their clients is different. Like, what is the thing that you do differently? Like, what's your approach? Is there and even if it's not something that you do differently, can you give it a unique name, a unique twist based on your approach, the way that you do it? Maybe you add a different kind of music to to the session, or maybe you space things out differently, or you go through a different sequence than other people would. Like those kinds of things that make your product different. And then it makes it a lot easier to throw rocks at the stuff that doesn't work.
Mm. As well, why I love muscle confusion is I don't need to be a sports scientist to understand that. That's like fifth grade language.
Exactly. Yeah. The best unique mechanisms are easily understood. They're different. They stand out. They help you differentiate your product or your service from everybody else, but they're very easy to understand.
Yeah, and that is harder than it sounds to
Definitely. Yeah,
accomplish.
definitely.
Another way of it's, and I think it's not as rock solid, but I think another way of creating a type of unique solution is to create a common language. Like a lot of sort of tribes and groups and communities are bonded over common language. So what's funny is we call what you described as a unique mechanism, we call it a game changer. That's just like in our community, that's what we call it. And so essentially it follows the same principles that you've just outlined, but because we all call it a game changer, all of our customers and all of our team and everyone in the community, that in some way bonds us,
Right.
even though it's
Right.
not actually different than what you've just said.
No, that's exactly right. If you have a community, the language will evolve and develop over time. You'll suddenly have inside jokes, or you'll refer to programs in certain ways, and like that stuff starts to develop, and that's the thing that makes a community strong. And yeah, I mean it's a really smart thing to do, to use that inside language. Jargon, is what we would call. And a lot of times copywriters say, well, don't use jargon. That's true. Don't use jargon when you're talking to somebody who's not in the in crowd. But if you're talking to somebody in the in crowd, use all the jargon, because they want to know that you understand who they are, that you talk the same language, that they're understood. And that's when that common language jargon is really useful.
That's right. Hey, this is so fascinating. I could go all day, Rob. Can you tell me, as we draw this to a close, can you tell me about a specific situation, either in one of your marketing efforts or one of a client's, that has just had a really surprising result?
Yeah, there's two ways that copy is surprising. The disappointing way is that, when you write copy and you are absolutely sure this is going to be awesome, and it flops. And that happens a lot. I've heard, we call the very best copywriters, we tend to call them A-list copywriters. These are people who are literally paid $20,000-$30,000 to, write one sales page. And I've heard them talk about that, a really good A-list copywriter only beats a control, or has copy that is better than the previous copy about half the time. And so it shouldn't be surprising that sometimes when we write things, it doesn't work. And I'm guessing that a lot of your community, have got this great idea, a headline or a message or whatever, and when they put it out into the world, it just doesn't resonate. That's a horrible surprise, but it happens a lot. And so if that's happening for you, don't worry. Even if it happens, because you've hired a copywriter, really good copywriters don't like when that happens. So they will want to continue working with you in order to improve and make things, better. But the copy is a lever in the other direction as well. So if you're talking to the right audience, if you're offering really good value with your offer, then copywriting starts to be this thing that like turns up the heat. And I have seen copy, just a change in copy take a program that maybe sold 2 or 3 times and literally sell hundreds of times. And all they changed was the way that the copy is messaged. You know, a better headline, a better message. It's actually talking, you know, about the problems that it solves. It's overcoming those objections. It's going through all those things that we talked about at the top of the show, and it's doing it well, so that when you get it in front of the right person, it resonates with them. And so, you know, seeing a product go from complete failure to total success, and the only thing you change is the copy, that happens, and it's really gratifying to see it when it does.
Mm. I can share a couple of examples because we've had the exact same experience in our company. We've run in 2020 alone, so we're recording this at the beginning of 2021. In 2020, we ran something like 350 different ads on Facebook and Instagram, and the idea there is, of course, testing a ton of things, right? And if anyone is familiar with running ads, what you'll find is that from 350, you're like, it's the 80-20 rule. Most of your performance comes from a very small percentage. One of the absolute winners of 2020 was the headline was "Your own app equals freedom?" ? Not even grammatically correct, but very, very short, fifth grade sort of language. And I didn't think it was going to work. Like, I'm always wrong is what I've learned. So your own app equals freedom. And then the other one was so funny. Facebook has an algorithm when you run ads. You can run a video ad, and then you can ask Facebook, hey, find the most compelling frame of this ad, basically the one where least people sort of move on during that part of the ad. Find the most compelling frame and tell me, because then I can create an image out of that and run that as an ad. And we had this ad that was basically 2 minutes long, a series of titles, and each title is on screen for a couple of seconds, and it essentially tells a bit of a narrative, but basically the idea is that we could find the title that was the most compelling. And the title that was the most compelling was like something in the middle of all of the things that we thought would work, and it simply said, "At any time on any device." Now, I don't think that's a very good headline, but who cares what I think, right? And we ran that as an image ad, and that was like in the top 3 best performing ads for Passion, made minimum 6 figures last year. And it's like, doesn't even really make sense.
That's amazing. Yeah. We, you know, for some of the programs that we run, you know, in teaching copywriters how to start businesses, you know, we have an ad that we've been running for 3 years. And every time, you know, we're like, hey, you know, let's try some other things. Let's try some other headlines. We've just started calling it Old Reliable. It always pulls better. It always pulls at a lower cost per acquisition. It drives me crazy because I don't actually like this ad all that much, but it works. And, you know, fortunately, the thing that we're selling, you know, it helps copywriters really do, you know, build a great foundation for the business. Like, it's a really good program. I want to find ads that outperform it. It's frustrating when stuff doesn't work, you know, when you think it does, but it's also good to have those ads that do work really well, even if it's unpredictable.
Yeah, absolutely. Super cool. That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Rob. I'm sure that given the conversation we've had, people want to follow you and get more of this amazing content. So how can they stay in touch?
So a couple of places where you can find us. We have a podcast called the Copywriter Club podcast that's available on, you know, iTunes, Stitcher. I believe it's at Spotify, you know, Amazon, you know, all the places where you can find podcasts, the Copywriter Club. We have, you can find out more about the programs, the things that we do for copywriters. You know, we don't do a lot of things for businesses that want to write their copy, but, you know, if you're looking for a copywriter, you know, maybe this would be a, you know, a resource for you, thecopywriterclub.com. And if you are a copywriter and want to hang out with other copywriters, we have a free Facebook group called the Copywriter Club. It's on Facebook. You do have to be a copywriter to join. And so, you know, just search us out there and answer a couple questions, and we can get you into that group and come hang out with us and learn all you want to know about copy. Ask your questions. You know, it's a fun group with 12,000 other copywriters. And yeah, that's where you'll find me.
Fantastic. Rob, thank you so much. Everyone, that was Rob Marsh. This has been Passion to Profession. Thank you so much for watching or listening. And yeah, have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.